Hello and welcome to World News here on TVP World. I'm Marie Cato. Defence ministers from NATO military alliances are expected to make pledges on Wednesday to buy more weapons from the US to send to Ukraine. US Secretary of Defence Pete Hegseth is in Brussels for the meeting and said firepower, that's what's coming. We are joined live by our EU correspondent Angela Scujans in the Belgian capital. Hello, Angela. What weapons are needed?
Good morning. So we know that roughly $2 billion has already been given to the war-torn country as part of this initiative. This comprises interceptors for Patriot air defence missile systems, as well as missiles for high-mobility artillery rocket systems. We know that the Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has been calling on long-range Tomahawk missiles to be supplied by the US. We're not sure if that is going to be a part of that package today. But it comes as the Q Institute reported on Tuesday as well that military aid for Ukraine fell 43% from the months of July to August, highlighting that more needs to be given to the war-torn country to continue repelling Russian aggression. The need for those NATO military alliance defence ministers to speak to their heads of states to buy into this scheme was reiterated and called upon by not only the NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, but also US Secretary for Defence Pete Hegseth this morning before that meeting kicked off in Brussels.
And there is now much more cash on the table. There is firepower coming out of our defence industry, which is so important. And we are doing everything collectively to keep Ukraine strong. But I particularly want to thank President Trump and you personally for your leadership and the whole team for the fact that NATO is now much stronger, more lethal.
Firepower, that's what is coming, we expect and is coming from NATO. And it was a historic summit just a couple of months ago, brought about by leadership of President Trump to say we need our allies to step up. And they did, and they have in those commitments. Now those commitments will soon translate into capabilities, which is the most important aspect of it. And one part of that, of course, is PURL, is the initiative where European countries buy U.S. weapons transferred to NATO for the fight in Ukraine to bring peace to that conflict.
US Secretary for Defence Pete Hegseth speaking there about the need for those NATO defence ministers to make pledges as part of the PURL initiative. Earlier this morning we heard Sweden, Estonia and Finland pledge that they will contribute. However, there was criticism that some of those larger EU heavy hitters such as France, Italy and Spain are backing out. However, more clarity will emerge at a press conference later today. Questions do hover whether this will be enough to meet the $3.5 billion required, called for by the Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky to continue repelling Russian aggression, particularly as we inch towards those colder temperatures.
Angela Scujans reporting for us from Brussels. Thanks so much. Ukrainians in multiple regions of the country suffered blackouts late on Tuesday evening due to a grid overload. According to the state power transmission company Ukrenergo, power cuts have been implemented in 6 regions, including Kyiv, Kharkiv, Sumy and Poltava.
The Ukrainian power operator said that most blackouts were caused by lingering problems from Russian attacks on the energy system. Full power cuts had to be implemented in Sumy, Kharkiv, Poltava and Dnipropetrovsk, while partial ones were applied in Kirovohrad, Kyiv and Cherkasy regions. According to local authorities in Kyiv, parts of the Ukrainian capital were dark due to an emergency situation in the city's power grid. This forced the Kyiv metro to temporarily rely on reserve power sources to keep operating. Later, the local administration reported that emergency crews had restored power to the affected areas. However, there were still reports of outages. The pressure in water supply also had to be reduced to a minimum, leaving thousands of households without running water.
Speaking from the Oval Office on Tuesday evening, Donald Trump said he's, quote, very disappointed with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. The US president said that Putin should have won the war in Ukraine within the first week, but instead the conflict has dragged on for nearly 4 years.
I'm very disappointed because Vladimir and I had a very good relationship, probably still do. I don't know why he continues with this war. This war has been so bad for him. He's going into 4 years of a war that he should have won that war in 1 week. He's now going to soon be into his 4th year. He's got to really settle this war. And you know, they have long lines waiting for gasoline in Russia right now, right? They have long lines. Who thought that was going to happen? And all of a sudden his economy is going to collapse. And I'd like to see him do well. I mean, I had a very good relationship with Vladimir Putin, but he just doesn't want to end that war.
The United Kingdom will extend its Royal Air Force mission in Central and Eastern Europe until the end of the year. The decision follows recent Russian drone incursions into Polish airspace. British Defence Secretary John Healey announced that the RAF's participation in NATO's Eastern Sentry mission will continue through 2025. Typhoon jets have been patrolling Polish skies since September incursions by Russian drones. Healey said the move aims to deter Vladimir Putin from further testing the alliance's resolve. NATO launched the mission on September 13th to reinforce its eastern flank. In a separate statement, London confirmed it has delivered over 85,000 military drones to Ukraine this year, all produced in British factories. In total, the UK has pledged about €5.3 billion in military aid for Ukraine in 2025.
And I can announce the UK will extend our commitment to NATO's Eastern Sentry mission, which means British jets will continue to fly over Poland until the end of the year. And we're also ramping up our drone production for Ukraine, delivering over 100,000 drones this year, and jointly building new, improved interceptor drones with Ukraine.
This is the next step in silencing anyone who is trying to talk to Russians inside Russia, said Alexandra Filipenko, an independent U.S.-Russia relations analyst, in a conversation with TVP World. Her comments come amid a new escalation in the Kremlin's campaign against its critics. Russia's Federal Security Service has launched a criminal case against exiled opposition figure Mikhail Khodorkovsky, accusing him of creating a terrorist organization.
Mikhail Khodorkovsky, for example, is one of the leading voices that is heard inside Russia because he has his own media. He used to be an extremely rich person who was imprisoned in Russia for 10 years since 2003, when he apparently had presidential ambition, and that is why he was imprisoned in 2003, because Putin felt that maybe Mikhail Khodorkovsky can try to become the president of Russia. So Mikhail Khodorkovsky, when he came out of jail, when he moved to Europe, he made his own media. Now he has his own media in Russian that is talking directly to Russians, and now his media it's criminalized to watch it. Now it will be criminalized to put likes in YouTube or on Facebook or on any other platforms that are banned, but Russians still watch it through VPN. So this means even less possibility to talk to Russians, not just a foreign agent, but a terrorist, an extremist. This is the next step. This is the next level, of course, of silencing anyone who is trying to talk to Russians inside Russia.
Hungarian opposition leader Peter Magyar has said that he would not immediately turn his back on Russian oil if he beats Viktor Orban in the next general election. Orban's government has been strongly critical of the EU's drive to distance itself from Russian fuel imports, warning that doing so would be disastrous for the Hungarian economy.
Magyar, whose TISA party is leading Orban's Fidesz in the polls, is expected to take a different stance on Russia should he come to power. At the same time, the Hungarian oppositionist told Radio Free Europe that he is not aiming for a rapid overnight change in Hungarian energy policy. According to Magyar, the move away from Russian-produced fuels would be gradual and could take until 2035. Hungary and Slovakia are the only EU countries that still import Russian oil amid a geopolitical shift following Moscow's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Magyar's comments come before next week's discussions of EU ministers on a plan that would require all countries of the bloc to halt Russian oil and gas imports by 2028.
Tens of thousands of Belgians took to the streets on Tuesday to protest government austerity measures, including a raised retirement age and the introduction of budget cuts. The general strike grounded flights and halted public transport operations.
In Brussels alone, an estimated 80,000 people marched down the streets in opposition to government reforms, spending cuts, and an increased retirement age.
We will have to work much longer and for much less. After a while, it becomes physically impossible.
The Belgian government plans to increase the retirement age threshold from 65 to 67 years. There's also talk of limiting unemployment benefits, budget cuts, shrinking healthcare funds, reducing child benefits, and raising VAT.
I actually completely disagree that any savings need to be made. There are many other ways to find money for healthcare that are not at the expense of the people.
Belgian youth are already alarmed at the talk of increasing the retirement age.
When I'm old, I just want to have my time. I want my time to follow my dreams.
The protesters were also concerned that the austerity measures would not affect everyone equally.
They have less expectations for employers or the wealthy. I hope this demonstration inspires them to work on a balanced budget. I really hope that those with the broadest shoulders will bear the heaviest burdens.
The government's plans to increase austerity measures have angered Belgian unions, who organized the protests. The demonstrations were largely peaceful, but some clashes with the police were reported.
And that's all for World News. Thank you for joining us and stay tuned for more on TVP World. Goodbye.